The Activist Inquisition. Exploring a world that emphasizes external solutions over internal solutions. By J. Adam Cohen. Introduction. All you have to do is take 2 seconds to look through Facebook or Twitter to see the levels that people are willing to hypnotize themselves to for their own BS. The lies people are willing to tell themselves to make up for their insecurities and why their life isn't really working out. Millions and millions of gammas who, instead of looking at the mirror and taking 1 ounce of self-awareness and looking at why their life is the way it is, they have hypnotized themselves so deeply to their own BS that it makes more sense to believe that someone who they have never met has determined the entire outcome of their life and is responsible for nearly all of their problems. They spend all their energy on something they made up in their own head to convince themselves that everything is okay with them. They're insane. And the worst part about these lies is that they are very convincing. Alex Becker. This observation is the exact description of the nadir of activism and external solutions in the current day. It has become the ultimate convincing argument of the victim mentality. Victims now not only blame one person or a group of people for why they cannot pursue happiness, they are now giving a very convincing reason to do so. They spend far too much time and energy doing this, and can now surround themselves with other victims who cheer them on. The above observation is unsettlingly accurate. Before you read on, do yourself a favor and scroll through your social media for a few seconds. There is no doubt that you will come across what the above observation has described at some point. One of the reasons why I deleted my social media accounts in September of 2019 was because I saw important people in my own life do this. It was heartbreaking to see people close to me waste so much energy on this. This condition is not getting any better. In fact, it is getting much, much worse. The pursuit of external solutions over internal ones is something that is currently revered and seen as preferable to internal solutions. It was very easy to marry external and internal solutions in the past. It is not this way now. Currently, you are pressured to pursue external solutions, often at the expense of internal ones. You are also pressured to follow any form of external solutions or else suffer social consequences. Although things have always been this way, it is even more pronounced now, and it is starting an unsettling trend that serves as nothing more than rationalizations for an unfulfilling life. Instead of being encouraged to pursue your own personal level of happiness and fulfillment, you now have more options to pursue external solutions to achieve an illusion of that very same kind of fulfillment. Don't make a lot of money? Not your responsibility. Rage on social media about how the minimum wage should be higher instead of seeking out a promotion or new job. Does your love life suck? Also not your responsibility. Just get on a message board that demonizes the rapist dude bros or the man-hating feminists who have made dating so difficult for you and others of your kind instead of improving. Got divorced? Not only is that not your fault, that's the system's fault. Courts have always treated people of your sex, gender, or sexual orientation wrong when it comes to divorce for decades. Change that and everything will be alright. Not in shape? That's definitely not your fault. Don't people know that they need to stop shaming and recognize that people are healthy at every size? You know you'll be healthier once people stop all the shaming. And you know that your country has oppressed your race for centuries, despite the fact that millions of people of your race in your country are successful and safe. So instead of trying to be like them, it is a much better idea to attack the race that you feel under attack from, even if only certain individuals in that race are committed to attacking your race. What if your race used to be revered and now it's being demonized by very small groups of radical activists. Well, not only is that not your fault, that also needs to change, right? It's much better to upset the activists that you dislike than work on your own personal goals and aspirations. It makes much more sense. These are just a few of the rationalizations that are used by what I call professional victims all over the world. These are people who make real content based on those rationalizations and literally get paid for it. They have made careers out of creating victims. These rationalizations tend to also be the swan song of anybody who used to be successful but now cannot maintain their success because of a changing culture that they feel they cannot thrive in. If you've ever said the following things, or statements like them, then you are rationalizing your lack of success and fulfillment by running up the wrong wall. A wall built on victimhood and not self-awareness. My situation will improve once blank takes office. Things will be much better for me once the blank are put to justice. I will only be happy if blank lose their privileges. Things are only going to get better for me if the blank are silenced. Do not feel bad if you've ever said these things. It is very likely that you've been pressured to say these things because you have felt obligated to. We all deal with this kind of pressure. However, giving into it will rob you of happiness and fulfillment. This book will show you that it is much more effective to improve your life through your own devices and then change things around you if you so choose, instead of relying on the world around you to change in order to feel happy or fulfilled. Part 1. What is activism? What are external solutions? Before learning about how we are being taught to pursue activism and external solutions instead of internal ones, you need to know exactly what activism and external solutions entail. As I mentioned earlier, we are entering a world where you will be heavily influenced to pursue these things at best and be forced to pursue these things in some aspect at worst. I define activism as any attempt to change some aspect of the world you live in for what you believe is better. This is the most general definition of it. Although this takes many forms, most activism revolves around cultural change. External solutions operate the same way. When you pursue an external solution, you look to others to change their ways so that you or your kind can benefit or improve in some way. These two activities tend to operate on ideals that usually revolve around the concepts of fairness and justice on the surface. In the abstract, they are an attempt to impose one group's ideals onto a group that is either alien to or at odds with those ideals. No matter how you look at it, this defines the core of activism and external solutions. What starts with justice usually tends to end with vengeance and retribution. Now, it is not my place to determine which forms of activism or external solutions are helpful for our world and which ones are not. I only know that pursuing these things are typically not a good use of time or energy unless specific and rare conditions are met and unless you are willing to make significant sacrifices in your life. This will be explored later on. I will also admit that activism and external solutions are sometimes necessary in improving the world, since the end goal typically results in an old tradition being replaced with a new one. New traditions can be a boon or a detriment, depending on what kind of person you are, and this will be explored in great detail later on. Another thing you should know is that there is a difference between external solutions and having an opinion. Possessing opinions about certain things or having certain ideals is fine, as long as you are not overly dogmatic about it, going out of your way to attack others who have a different opinion. There is also nothing wrong with donating money or time to organizations that provide support or advocacy for groups who you believe want to be helped. In fact, this is much more preferable to pursuing external solutions or being an activist, because at least nonprofit organizations such as these tend to peacefully create their own culture without going out of their way to attack the culture of others. The terms activism and external solutions will be used interchangeably throughout this book. From this point on, you can assume that they both mean the exact same thing: going out of your way to change the world around you in some way. Chapter 1: Ethical Activism, Toxic Activism, and the Unsettling Truth Behind Both. Understanding that activism is a distraction from your personal aspirations will require you to learn a few intimate details about activism in and of itself. Remember that the purpose of this book is not to attack any form of activism. It is simply to argue that engaging in most activism or external solutions can prove to be a massive distraction for you. The thing about activism is that it takes dozens, if not hundreds, of forms. Most stereotype it as protesting. While this is the most common form of it, there are other forms of activism that use just as much energy as protesting. Whether it is protesting, voting in elections, creating petitions, signing petitions, or engaging in heated arguments, all of these things are forms of looking for external solutions for your problems. The truth is that we are living in a world of endless opportunity, and any external solution that you can think can improve your life can easily be replaced by a set of internal solutions that you can utilize to improve your life more effectively. Best of all, these internal solutions can help enable you to help others of your kind as you become more successful. For now, let's explore how activism and external solutions are executed. The first of these is to be ethical. Most who pursue external solutions in activism usually prefer to be ethical about it if possible. This is simply an attempt to peacefully get your point across without going out of your way to attack anybody. When you peacefully convince someone that they should change their tradition, culture, views, or who they support without any intention of attacking or inconveniencing them, you're being an ethical activist. Most who take up external solutions do it ethically, and although it seems harmless, it still takes a lot more energy to do this than you think. Think of the last time you had a very heated discussion, or of any sort, online or offline. How committed were you to the discussion? Did it not interrupt other things that you might have needed to do? This is what happens when you engage in activism or external solutions that are ethical in nature. While you are not going out of your way to hurt anybody, you do go out of your way to waste your own precious time and energy. As unfortunate and as surprising as this may sound, ethical activism is actually pretty rare nowadays. Toxic activism, which is when you use activism to go out of your way to attack or inconvenience others, is much more common and even encouraged. We see toxic activism practically all around us. Most acts of public protest have become toxic, since most protesters go out of their way to inconvenience or attack whoever they are protesting against. Even if protesters are not being violent or hurting anybody, they're still being toxic since they are actively disturbing the peace of others who are not involved. Slandering others for disagreeing with you is also toxic activism. You see this constantly on social media, where you're usually privy to post after post and comment after comment that is full of this kind of discourse. Even more unsettling, it has been standard discourse in the media long before it became standard discourse in social media. Another aspect of toxic activism is that it often revolves around the act of forcing ideals onto others, or forcing those who have decided to see things on a case-by-case basis to choose between one side or the other. This binary and dogmatic way of thinking has unfortunately also become standard for today's activist. Ethical and toxic activism typically entail the same kinds of activities: going to marches and protests, demonizing social and political figures and processes while lionizing others, attacking others who do not perfectly follow their ideals. The list goes on and on. The only difference is that a certain line is crossed when activism goes from ethical to toxic, and most who cross this line are not aware of how easy it is to cross. The unsettling truth about activism is that because it is an attempt to change culture and tradition in some way, it is very easy to go from ethical to toxic. This is very difficult for most to accept, but it is something that can and should be micromanaged. One of the best things that modern activists can and should do is determine how far is too far and when that line between ethical and toxic activism gets crossed. Then resist all temptation to cross it. Toxic activism is extremely seductive, and it can be very easy to fall into the trap that toxic activism has set for you. However, it is important to have ideals and worldviews that are in alignment with the person you want to be. However, it is very easy to let these ideals and worldviews take over your beliefs of others as well as your personal values. You should never let your ideals or worldviews affect how you treat others. While engaging in ethical activism does not necessarily cause you to live by your ideals, engaging in toxic activism encourages it. It can be very easy to live by your ideals and worldviews to where it can affect areas of your life that would be of much better quality if you divorced your ideals and worldviews from them. Unfortunately, this is getting more and more difficult to do in the current times we live in. It is also very important to recognize that even if you have a solid sense of contribution and you know who you want to contribute to, you can still be tempted to live by your ideals and allow them to affect other areas of your life. This will also be explored in much greater detail later on. Understanding the pressure to engage in external solutions is very important to knowing about how they are becoming an almost unavoidable part of our lives. The next chapter will highlight some of my most intimate encounters with activists, as well as pressure to take up external solutions. Perhaps you might be able to relate to some of them. Chapter 2. Activism and pressure for external solutions that I've personally encountered. To understand how much of a distraction the majority of activism and pressure for external solutions are, it is useful to detect certain times in your life where you had intimate encounters with activism or were pressured to take up external solutions. There are 3 specific moments where I was privy to activism or pressured to pursue external solutions in my life. As you learn about these, take a look back at your life and find moments where you had similar encounters. You can also compare these to current encounters with activists and those who pressure you to pursue external solutions. External solutions were first pushed onto me at the age of 14. It was the 1996 election, and my social studies teacher wanted us to participate in something my city called junior voting, where minors could enter election polls in order to become familiarized with the voting process in the United States. Voting is indeed an external solution, and it is one that is pushed upon most Americans at a very young age. Young people all over the nation are pressured to vote not only by their peers, but by media everywhere. It is seen as morally sound and as a form of civic duty of sorts, and it's been sold to us like used cars for centuries. And sure enough, on that fateful day in 8th grade, when the only real things on my mind were girls, sports, and video games, I was forced to make the kinds of decisions that most grown adults do not know how to make. Now, of course, My vote did not count because I was a minor, and the only real intention behind the project was to provide a hands-on approach to voting. However, it was the first time in my life that I was pressured to engage in an external solution. In order to get credit for the assignment, you needed to show the teacher a copy of who and what you voted for, which was given to you after leaving the poll. I also heard about the concept of anarchy for the first time when I was 14. My curiosity led me to seek out more information about what anarchy really meant, as limited as that was at the time. At first, I did this out of defiance in my youth because I did not enjoy being forced to take part in a system that I did not care for in order to get a school grade. But as I got older, I would align these ideals with my own values and principles. This is a common mistake that most young people make. I began listening to a band called Bad Religion in high school, whose songs had lyrical content that was very critical of group mentality, theocracy, war, crony capitalism, and other concepts that generally revolve around a deep state that pushes and takes advantage of others, and pushes tradition onto others in some way. At some point during my junior year of high school, I began meeting other students who enjoyed this kind of music. Most of them referred to themselves as vegan straight edge. These individuals disliked drug use and meat consumption so much that they would relentlessly bully, harass, and even assault anybody who disagreed with them. I was one of those individuals who disagreed with their ways. Although I enjoyed the same kind of music that the vegan straight edge crowd enjoyed, I had nothing against meat consumption or drug use. It was a grave mistake for me to mention this in front of my new vegan straight edge friends. The second I mentioned this, they were no longer my friends, and I needed to begin actively avoiding them in order to not be bullied by them. My encounters with straight edge vegans in high school are a good example of what happens when you make the very common mistake of living by your ideals. When you live by your ideals, you tend to dogmatically think in terms of absolutes, purposefully demonizing or lionizing whatever fits or does not fit into your ideals. Living this way does not have any real benefits. It will affect any aspect of your life that you think it can affect. The error of living by your ideals instead of a strong set of values and principles that are either independent or are carefully woven into your ideals will rob you of numerous opportunities and in some cases, years of your life. While it is common and practically harmless to do this when you're young, which is what the vegan straight edge kids were doing in this example, living by your ideals in your adulthood will set you back years of progress in any area of your life. My last encounter with activists and the pressure to engage in external solutions took place in college. I made the mistake to live by my ideals during my college years, and I was interested in learning all I could about social sciences instead of using college to network and learn marketable vocational skills. Because of this, I wound up taking quite a few classes that would practically preach external solutions in activism, often by way of lectures about individuals who pursued external solutions as a vocation. One of these courses was a course entitled Liberation Sociology. I enrolled in it expecting the material to be a smattering of lectures about significant activists. I was right. Liberation Sociology required us to read books from significant activists who pushed extremely progressive ideals, such as Karl Marx, Cornel West, Bell Hooks, Betty Friedan, and others. I expected this, and was interested in it all the same. What I didn't expect was for my instructor to physically show us how to start riots. Yes, we actually learned how to, in my instructor's words, get our point across, but only hurt property, not people. This was activism and external solutions on steroids, and the announcement of that assignment was enough to shock me into dropping the course and getting me to seriously think about what I was going to do with my life if I kept living by my ideals. As the semester progressed, fellow students would come to me and tell me more about the course that I dropped. The more I heard about it, the more I was convinced that courses like that were designed to tell the student public that external solutions in activism are actually better than internal solutions. In fact, as my college career progressed, I developed a habit to detect any moment where I was being preached to take part in external solutions. These moments were overwhelmingly numerous, as you will soon find out. But for now, let's explore why activism and external solutions represent some of the biggest distractions in your life. Chapter 3. Why activism and external solutions are seductive distractions. Distractions and escapism are seemingly all around us. It is now easier than ever to watch or listen to hundreds of thousands of content online. Social media has allowed us to enter a world where not only are you constantly entertained, but also a world where the dopamine receptors of your brain are almost constantly activated, leading you to escape from anything and everything and still believe that you're accomplishing something. The world of activism and external solutions are no exception to this. In fact, there are even bigger forms of escapism and distractions than you think. Just like other forms of escapism, activism and external solutions use a lot of your brain's energy, and unless you're willing to sacrifice very key areas of your life to achieve what you want to achieve with your external solutions, they will give you practically nothing in return in terms of your personal achievements. Different from other forms of escapism, such as watching things, listening to things, playing video games, and consuming junk food, drugs, or alcohol, engaging in activism and external solutions are even more intimately tied to your emotions, your ego, and your ideals, as well as providing a release of tension. This is what makes them just as much, if not more seductive, than any other kind of escapism. Because you have so much emotional stake in your views, it is not as easy to determine whether activism or external solutions are affecting you adversely or not. You will also receive a lot more support from others when you pursue external solutions as well. This is what makes them different from other forms of escapism. For example, most of your friends or family would be concerned if you spent hours a day watching things, playing video games, or consuming a lot of drugs and alcohol, knowing that these things affect your well-being adversely. But what if you swap those out for engaging in activism or external solutions? You would get a different answer. In some cases, they may even encourage you. This is especially true when it comes to external solutions that are seen as a civic duty, such as voting in elections in the United States. If your friends and family engage in a lot of external solutions themselves, they may even pressure you yourself to do the same. The same way you might get pressured to drink or do drugs. However, external solutions are not nearly as demonized by the public as drugs or alcohol are, and that's what makes them even more seductive. Another thing that makes activism and external solutions very seductive is that nothing feeds your ego quite like they do. If there is an area of your life that you are struggling in, all you need to do is blame whatever forces you believe are holding you back, do all you can to antagonize, or in some other cases, go out of your way to physically stop these forces, and you'll literally feel like you have solved the problem. Doing these things will make you feel a grand sense of accomplishment, but you'll have nothing to show for it in the end. Indeed, it is much easier to rage against others who you feel are holding you back instead of finding a way to accept the culture you live in, adapt to it, and make whatever adjustments you might need to make to improve things for yourself. Your ego likes doing this a lot more than doing the things necessary to improve yourself. When you engage in external solutions, you tend to feel a sense of accomplishment that is just as strong as the sense of accomplishment that you tend to feel when you have done something to improve your life. However, as mentioned before, this sense of accomplishment is nothing more than an illusion. You accomplish nothing for yourself when you pursue external solutions, no matter how happy it might make yourself for others. The final thing that makes external solutions so seductive and tempting is that your brain does not really tell the difference in the energy that you spend. You can spend the same amount of time and energy in comment wars online about social and political issues than you would on improving any area of your life, and your brain will not tell the difference. I personally struggled with this in my youth. I would find myself wasting hours of time writing thousands of words of comments about social and political issues on social media and other places online. This was time I was taking away from myself. The only reason why this might seem like you are improving the areas of your life that are the most challenging is because when you engage in external solutions, your brain makes a connection that confuses it with internal ones. So, while you are at a protest or arguing with others about social or political issues online, your brain analyzes this as being productive when you really are not. Another thing that you should understand is that external solutions have been seen as morally sound for a number of decades now. The peer pressure to take up external solutions instead of internal ones is very great. If you have made the decision to pursue internal solutions for your life instead of external ones, you better get ready to be ignored by many of your peers at best and attacked by them at worst. Even people who you thought gave you a lot of value in your life are likely to turn on you if you opt for internal solutions instead of external ones. Because of this, the ability to play ball with these types of individuals is very important. It also shows that you are embracing internal solutions the right way. Never forget that attacking external solutions is just another form of external solutions. When you truly take up internal solutions, you assume a live and let live approach to anybody who engages in external ones. Under no circumstances should you ever make the mistake of telling others that you are a better person than them because you embrace internal solutions. There are three elements that surround your internal debate of whether it is better to pursue external solutions than internal ones. They are the external solutions themselves, the internal solutions themselves, and your own set of ideals regarding the kinds of issues that surround these two.